Hi everyone, so let's get stuck into the 2011 pre-U economics multiple choice paper. Now here on our first question we've got the diagram shows PPC for a country that produces just two goods, X, a consumer good highlighted in millions of units, and Y, a capital good highlighted again in millions of units. What can be concluded from the diagram? So the amounts of goods X and Y that the country will produce, no, that's certainly not the case because we don't know where the country will actually produce output at. B, the country's preference for present as compared to future consumption. Again, we don't know that information. There's nothing about preferences highlighted here. C, the extent to which the country's resources are being fully utilised. Well, we don't know because it's not like there's a position here within the PPC which tells us that the resources are underutilised, so we don't know. D, the opportunity cost the country of good X in terms of good Y, and that is actually clearly highlighted. So for instance, at producing a quantity of 5 million units of good Y, we can see it would be 3 million units of good X, which we would be able to reach. But if we then substitute 1 more million units down to 4 million here, then we can gain, what is that, about 4.5 million units of good X. So it does show us the opportunity cost, and we know that about PPCs. Okay, so let's have a look at question 2. The steel required for the construction of new car assembly plant in a fully employed economy. Now that's important, fully employed. So that means anyone who wants to get a job can find a job. Is obtained by increasing the output of the domestic steel industry. So what is the opportunity cost of producing the steel? Okay, right, so obviously what we've got to factor in here is that this is obtained by increasing the output of the domestic steel industry. Now that means that some people will need to be reallocated because we're not necessarily just going to get gains in the level of full employment, so to speak. Okay, so it means that some of these fully employed people will need to be reallocated to the steel industry. So therefore, what is the opportunity cost? Well, it's the opportunity cost of diverting these resources fundamentally that we must understand. Okay, so A, the alternative benefits foregone by diverting resources to additional steel manufacture. Yes, well that certainly makes sense. The alternative benefits foregone by diverting resources to additional steel manufacture. So that is our direct opportunity cost because this is a fully employed economy. Yeah, so that certainly fits the bill, so the answer is A. Okay, let's have a look at number 3. So here we go. A firm runs a successful advertising campaign. In order to pay for the advertising campaign, the firm has to increase the price of its product. Now, that sounds significant. What will be the overall effect on the demand for the product and on the equilibrium quantity demanded? Okay, so let's take a look at how this may influence the firm's demand and supply. So we know it's a successful advertising campaign. I'm just highlighting demand and supply here, just doing a very simple diagram. We know this has been successful, but what's also notable is that the firm has to increase the price of its product. So really, that is because it's having to pay for this advertising campaign. So in effect, you've got to remember that this equals the marginal cost of producing the good. So if you just think of this on the first phase, then you'll be led to increase A, but that would be the wrong answer. And the reason is because now the marginal cost of producing the good has actually risen, and we can see it would be up here. So the supply would equal this new marginal cost, and let's say that's directly in line with the original level of consumption. So we don't necessarily know here what impact that will have on the overall equilibrium quantity demanded. So therefore the answer would be B. Okay, question 4. In the diagram, I1 and I2 are an individual's indifference curves, and JK is her initial budget line. An increase in the price of good X causes her budget line to shift JL. So the price of the good has gone up, and therefore we shift from JK back to JL. So she can afford to buy less of this given good, and her budget constraint shifts inwards, as we can see there. Okay, now this means that she moves back onto I1 from I2, and we can see that the consumption point is there as opposed to there. Okay, so then we firstly got to remove the income effect, or consider the actual income effect as the difference here between these indifference curves. As we shift this budget line back, we reach a point which is just tangential with this first indifference curve, I1. And at this point, we can see exactly where the consumer would consume, or RS. Now that is removing the fact that the price of the good has of course increased. Okay, so we can therefore determine that the income effect is from S to T, and that is our income effect. Okay, now remember these indifference curves highlight the marginal rate of substitution, the rate at which consumers will actually substitute one good for another, and therefore we can see between S and R, consumers would substitute their preferences back to S and back to R from S, and that would be our substitution effect. So if we just run through, the income effect is ST and then RS. Okay, so the answer would be C. Okay, number 5. Okay, so a 5% increase in volume of a firm's sales results in a 5% increase in its revenue. What can be deduced about the price elasticity of the demand for the firm's products? So notice we don't have any information about the price change, and of course price elasticity of demand equals the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Okay, so we don't have all of that information available, but nevertheless, the fact that we've got a 5% increase in volume of sales and a 5% increase in revenue, this is likely to suggest that the demand curve is perfectly elastic. So if we just consider Q1 there and a 5% increase, which might be, say, to Q2, then it is going to be perfectly elastic, okay, because we don't know anything about any price change. Okay, so therefore we've got to consider B as our answer there.